Hi, welcome to VRIS RT Study Hall videos. In our first two videos, we talked about triggering and limiting, and now we're finally going to talk about cycling mechanisms. One more time, we'll just review our breath delivery. Remember, we talked about triggering. That was the start of our breath. Then we talked about the limiting mechanism that occurs during inspiration. And now we're getting ready to talk about the cycling mechanism. That is what is actually going to end the breath. So the definition of a cycling variable is, again, whenever that set variable is reached, the machine will cycle into expiration. These variables can be pressure, volume, time, or flow. When we say something is pressure cycled, it means that we set an inspiratory pressure, and once that pressure is reached, the machine cycles into expiration. This was commonly used on older ventilators. An example of this is actually also an IPPV machine. We would set an inspiratory pressure, say, of 20 centimeters of water. The breath would be delivered until you hit that 20 centimeters of water, and then the machine shut off and you passively exhaled. Volume cycling was also something that was typically done with older ventilators. Most modern ventilators use flow sensors and then time to calculate the volume delivered, and then it cycles based on that. Volume targeted is the more correct term, but you may see volume controlled ventilation referred to as volume cycled. Time is really the most common cycling mechanism used by today's microprocessor ventilators. I-time is set directly in pressure control and indirectly with flow and volume control. If you're in volume control, it's really using an equation. There are flow sensors there that's measuring flow. It has a set tidal volume. If you haven't learned this equation yet, you will. It's tidal volume equals flow times I-time. And so it knows how much tidal volume it's meant to give. It's able to sense the flow, and it calculates the amount of time that is needed before inspiration ends. So the breath will end when inspiratory time is reached. The easiest way to see this is really in pressure control ventilation. So here we had that inspiratory pressure of 30. And let's say that we actually set an I-time of 1 second. That means that this breath will end when 1 second has passed. That is really what is ending the breath, is that I-time. And finally, flow cycling. Flow cycling is used for spontaneous breaths with pressure support. This is very important to remember. Inspiratory flow slows as the patient reaches the end of the breath. This is a natural way that we have inspiratory flow. We need a faster flow at the beginning of inspiration, and then as we fill our lungs, we need less flow in there. And so what we're really basing this is on the peak flow that the patient gets. This would be at 30 liters per minute. We set the machine to cycle off at 20 to 25% of that peak flow. Now, I made this graphic in Excel, so it's not quite accurate technically. What you'll see here is that it'll drop straight down and then slowly go off. It's this point here that tells it to cycle off. And so in pressure support, we are flow cycled. So just the things that you need to make note of. Time is the primary cycling mechanism for modern ventilators. This is especially important to remember for pressure control. It is set directly with I-time or indirectly with flow rate for volume control. But for volume control, it may be called volume cycled in some places. The cycling mechanism for volume control is often left out of questions just because of that sort of ambiguity of it. But spontaneous breaths are flow cycled. This will be a question that is asked, so remember this. Based on the inspiratory flow, slowing down towards the end of the breath, that is what our flow cycle means. The setting that you use is going to be called E-sensitivity or cycle off percent, and we'll talk more about that setting when we get to that section. That is it for this lesson and for this little mini module of triggers, limiting, and cycling mechanisms. For more information, practice, ways to really interact with the material, you can go to myvresp.com. create an account, go under the Mechanical Ventilation course, Introduction Part 1, and you will find Mechanics and Breath Delivery. That is where you'll find the module on all of the things that we've talked about in the last few videos. Happy studying!